All right, everybody, get ready because today we're going deep on macros. You guys sent over a ton of stuff, 2 websites about if it fits your macros
Yeah.
or IFYM. And then there's this article from Fitness Magazine name about using macros, and they even have a calculator on there.
Mm.
So much to get to, but we're going to break it all down for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. They all have these calculators and info about macros, but I noticed they kind of come at it from different angles. Like you've got these websites dedicated to like the whole IFYM lifestyle, and then the article is really focused on losing weight with macros.
Right, okay, that makes sense. So I guess, not everyone's a macro expert, so let's
Yeah.
back up a sec. What are macros? Like, really?
Well, macros is just short for macronutrients. Basically, they're like the 3 main nutrients your body needs: a lot of carbohydrates, protein, and fats. Think of it like the big important numbers on a nutrition label.
Gotcha, yeah. I mean, like, we all know they're important and all, but I feel like most people don't really, stop and think about what each one does. We just kind of think of it all as food, right?
Totally. But that's where it gets really interesting, when you start to see how each one works. So, like, think of carbs as energy. They're like the fuel that keeps you going. Then you've got protein, which is all about, like, building and repairing your tissues. It's what helps you recover from a workout or build muscle. And then fats. Well, fats are important for your hormones and for absorbing certain nutrients.
So it's not like some diets where you just cut out a whole food group, like carbs are bad or whatever.
Yep, not at all. All 3 of them are super important. It's about finding the right balance for you.
Right, yeah, I see where you're going with this. And that's where those calculators come in, right?
Yeah.
They all have
Yep, exactly. They're all about figuring out what your body needs. So they take into account things like your age, whether you're a man or a woman, how much you weigh, how tall you are, how active you are, and what you're trying to achieve, like are you trying to lose weight, gain muscle, things like that. And based on all that, they tell you how many grams of each macro you should be eating every day.
Okay, sounds pretty simple in theory,
Ah.
but this is kind of like obsessive, to be counting every single gram you eat.
I get it. I totally get it. And honestly, that's something that the websites in the article actually talk about. They all say it's not about being super restrictive or getting crazy about the numbers. It's more about just being aware of what you're putting into your body and how it's affecting you. Like those IFYM websites especially, they talk a lot about the mental side of it and how, that flexibility can actually help people have a healthier relationship with food.
Oh, that's interesting. So instead of feeling like you can't eat anything you like, you can still have those foods just within your macro goals.
Exactly. You got it. It's about making good choices, not feeling like you're on a diet all the time. It's like a totally different way of thinking about food.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Okay, so these macro calculators, I mean, they're not all the same, are they? They're all using different, I guess, formulas, right?
That's the cool part. They are using different formulas. Some are more specific than others, too. Like one of the IIFYM websites I looked at even asks about any medical conditions you might have, which you don't see a lot.
Whoa, that's impressive. Taking personalization to a whole other level.
Yeah, they really are. And it just shows how important it is to pick a calculator that actually works for you. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
So, okay, we've got these personalized targets from the calculators and all, but how do we actually, use that information, I'm picturing myself with a food scale and a spreadsheet, weighing every single thing I eat.
Oh yeah, I can see how that could be a little much. Luckily, they've got some tips to make it easier. All of them mention those food tracking apps, like MyFitnessPal. It makes it super easy to keep track of what you're eating and see if you're hitting your macro goals.
Yeah, MyFitnessPal, I've heard of that one. But I don't know, I've always been a little intimidated by those apps, Are they actually, easy to use?
They're really not that bad, honestly. They've got huge databases of food already in there, so you don't usually have to enter stuff manually. And they do all the calculating for you, so you can just see how many grams of each thing you've had for the day.
Oh, okay, that's not bad. So that takes some of the guesswork out of it. What else can make it a little less overwhelming?
Meal prepping, for sure. The article and one of the websites both talk about that. It's way easier to eat healthy when you've already got your meals and snacks planned out.
It's like setting yourself up for success, right? Speaking of which, that article in Fitness Magazine name seems really focused on macros for weight loss. What's their take on that?
They've got a whole step-by-step thing for it. They start with figuring out your basal metabolic rate, your BMR. That's the minimum number of calories your body burns just to exist, even if you're doing nothing all day.
Okay, so that's like your baseline.
Yeah.
But most of us aren't aiming to be professional couch potatoes, haha.
Right, exactly. That's why they also talk about calculating your total daily energy expenditure, which, includes your activity level on top of your BMR, gives you a more realistic picture of how many calories you're actually burning.
Makes sense. Like if you're hitting the gym every day, you obviously need more calories than someone who's sitting at a desk all day.
Totally. So once you've got that number, they suggest eating more protein if you're trying to lose weight. Like 35% of your total calories from protein, which keeps you feeling full, so you're not like starving all the time.
Yeah, you don't want to be hangry, haha. But, this brings up something I've always wondered about. If we're so focused on the specific grams of protein and carbs and fat, are we missing out on other stuff? Like, what about all the vitamins and minerals we're supposed to be getting?
That's a really good question. And the article actually talks about that too. They say it's super important to eat mostly whole, nutrient-dense foods like fruits and veggies, lean proteins, and whole grains. It's not just about the macros, it's about making sure you're getting all the nutrients your body needs.
So, like, overall dietary balance.
Exactly. And even though the article is mostly about losing weight, one thing I thought was interesting was that they also talked about metabolic health. They said that paying attention to your macros can help your metabolism work better so you burn fat more efficiently and maintain muscle mass.
So it's not just about the number on the scale. It's
Yeah.
about how your body actually functions, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before about the mental side of it. It's more about making healthy choices, not just trying to lose weight.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've got that article all about weight loss. But what about building muscle? I imagine that's a whole different macro game, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's where that other website we talked about comes in. Macro calculator for muscle gain and weight loss. They're all about using macros to build muscle. They've got specific recommendations for people who want to, bulk up.
Okay, let's talk about gains then. What kind of macro ratios are we talking about here?
So they recommend a higher percentage of both protein and carbs, like 40% protein, 40% carbs, and then 20% fat. It gives your body what it needs to build muscle and the energy to do those intense workouts.
Right, it's like you're literally building new tissue. So you need the fuel and the materials to do it.
Exactly. And just like with weight loss, they say it's important to adjust your macros as you go. Your body changes, your calorie needs go up. So what worked for you before might not work anymore.
So it's not just like plugging numbers into a calculator once and you're done. It's more of a, ongoing thing.
Right, it's dynamic. And this website, they also talk about something we haven't mentioned yet, different macro breakdowns based on like what kind of diet you prefer. So they've got options for high protein and moderate carb, moderate protein and high carb, even a ketogenic approach, which is, super low carb.
Wow, that's cool. So they're saying there's no one right way to do it.
Exactly. And they also talk about your activity level too. Like, are you sedentary, lightly active, moderately active, or very active? That makes a big difference in how many calories and macros you need.
They really thought of everything, huh? So, okay, someone's listening to all this and they're like, all right, I'm ready to try this macro thing. What's like one main piece of advice that all these sources agree on?
The thing that really stood out to me is that you got to listen to your body and be flexible. Don't be afraid to change things up based on how you're feeling, your energy levels, how you're progressing. It's about figuring out what works for you.
Not just being like a slave to the numbers.
Right, it's about using them as a tool.
A tool to reach your goals and feel better overall.
Exactly. That's what they all agree on. It's about empowerment, not restriction.
All right, so we've covered a lot, huh? From like what macros even are to figuring out your numbers.
Yeah.
And how to use them for different goals. But let's bring it back to you guys listening, Like, what does all of this actually mean for your everyday life?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that you don't have to go all in on macro tracking. Just being aware of the macros in your food can be a big change.
So you're saying we don't have to get out the food scale and spreadsheet every time we eat.
Exactly. It's not about being perfect, Instead of worrying about the exact numbers, just pay attention to what kind of food you're eating and how much. Ask yourself, am I getting enough protein to fuel my workouts or just to have energy during the day?
Okay.
Or are the carbs I'm eating keeping me full and giving me energy? Or am I just reaching for junk food that makes me feel sluggish later?
Right.
Am I eating enough healthy fats too?
Those are good questions to think about. Just being more mindful of what you're putting in your body.
Exactly. And one thing that surprised me while I was looking at all these sources is how much of a difference small changes can make. Maybe you just add a little more protein to your breakfast and suddenly you're not starving by mid-morning. Or you swap out white bread for whole grain and you've got more energy all day.
It's like a little experiment almost.
Yeah. And the best part is you're not following some strict rules. You're just figuring out what works for you and your body.
Right, so it takes the pressure off.
Exactly. And that's something all three sources talked about. Whether you want to lose weight, gain muscle, or just feel better overall, the important thing is to find something that works for you long term.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Totally. And as you keep experimenting and learning, you might be surprised by how much you can actually change. Just by paying attention to the macros in your food, you can change your energy levels, your mood, even your overall health.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. So for anyone listening who's ready to, dive in, what's like one last piece of advice?
Don't overthink it. Just start with one small change. Maybe that's adding some protein to each meal or, making sure you're getting more fiber from whole grains and veggies. And as you start paying attention to how your body feels, you can keep adjusting things from there.
Awesome advice. Well, this has been a really interesting deep dive into macros. I think we busted some myths and learned a lot of cool stuff along the way. It's not about being restrictive or obsessed. It's about being in control and finding a way to nourish your body and reach your goals.
I totally agree. It's about taking care of yourself one good meal at a time.
That's a great way to put it. All right, well, that's going to do it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep nourishing your body.